You describe the kind of agriculture you do as
relational or relationship based.
Relationship based,
Yeah.
as opposed to commodity based. Explain the difference.
Yeah. Well, I'll give it a shot.
Okay.
In my construct, relationship based is, without putting a value judgment on either, relationship based typically has a shorter consumer to producer link than commodity does. That the producer is very close to the end user. The producer is a price setter as opposed to the commodity producer who's a price taker. They have more control over their price through markets, through production. They can in some ways more easily kind of tweak their system than a commodity producer can. The margin that any producer builds into their operation on the commodity side, I think, is pretty much focused on cost cutting, and on the relational side can be built in a variety of ways, including cost cutting, but also including exploring new market opportunities, other efficiencies. But it's not exclusively on the cost cutting side, because as a price setter, you can start fishing for other markets, for example.
And that's because the commodity, especially in Vermont, where the commodity agriculture is mostly dairy,
Right.
the price is set by the federal government, basically.
That's right.
Whereas your prices you really have a kind of a supply and demand situation.
Absolutely.
Which could change daily.
It can change daily, and in fact, there is more demand and more supply than when Judy and I started in 1981. Not surprisingly, so we're seeing some effects of that free market equation. Absolutely.
So that's because there's more demand for. I mean, again, this is how a free market system is supposed to work, isn't it?
That's right.
If there's more demand, there'll be more demand because people increasingly are concerned about the health and the impact of their purchases, and they want the locally grown food. They want organically grown food.
That's right. That's right.
And the increase in demand has led to an increase in suppliers as well as supply.
Absolutely.
So you have more competitors than you did.
That's true.
20 years ago.
That's right.
Is that good or bad?
In the big picture, it's a good thing. It becomes challenging for us because, having done it for 30 years and looking ahead to the next 30, where does that place us? With young, energetic folks as we once were, now kind of wanting a piece of what we have.
Right.
So that part is challenging, and frankly, I don't know that we've figured that out. But in general, it's a good thing. It forces us to not be complacent. It forces us to stay competitive, to work on our marketing pieces, keep our quality up. That's probably the bottom line for us is quality, because that's what allows us really to stay in the business from one year to the next, because it's the repeat business that we rely on. It's not the flash in the pan. Here we are with a great idea.
You have a customer base.
Yes.
That trusts the quality of your vegetables.
That's right.
You just do vegetables. You do fruit?
We do vegetables. We do a few fruits, some soft fruits, some raspberries, and that. We do. We have greenhouses as well. We have 4 greenhouses that we sell bedding plants in the spring.
But you have no livestock. You have no animal products.
Correct. We do. We did buy an old dairy farm in 1984 in Shoreham, so we do rent that to folks. I like to say we get all the benefit without any of the headache, but they keep heifers or dry cows or.
So you just get rent payments.
We get the manure.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So, what is the biggest problem that faces people in your kind of agriculture, in this relation-based agriculture relationship?
The biggest problem? Well, one of our recurring challenges, as I've said, is labor.
Right.
Getting that labor supply, and the markets. It's my passion is in producing things, is growing things, getting my hands dirty, and so forth. So the marketing ended up kind of falling on my good wife's shoulders. She drew the short straw. Marketing is a big piece of what we do here in the relational world. It has to be. Again, if you're marketing yourself on the relationship side of things. In the commodity world, it's you kind of don't have to market that piece because it's taken care of. You just have to do your job well. You have to produce something, and the co-ops and so forth.
Because the product is already in surplus, essentially. So you just produce it. Yeah. It's kind of an organized system. A truck comes by and pays you, and the people, and you get a check every month.
It's a little more segmented in the
Right.
sense that you pay your dues to the co-op, who not only picks up your milk and distributes it, but sells it ultimately, or sells it to a seller, and gets you your check. For us, it's working up relationships with our various accounts, which could include all the individuals in our CSA, for example. Certainly the wholesale